and welcome to the Tao of Our Understanding Recovery Podcast. In this podcast, we discuss mystical works of literature and how they relate to recovery. We hope you enjoy today's podcast episode.
Hello, this is Buddy C. Welcome to the Tao of Our Understanding Recovery Podcast. Today we have Brian and Drew and Oscar. Good to have you guys. We will be discussing the 69th verse of the Tao Te Ching. One benefit that we have with our podcast and our Facebook group and buddyc.org is the fact that you can take our episodes and you can search. We're on the 312th episode. So you can go to the page, the actual podcast page, and I'll put that page in the episode notes so you can easily find it. Or you can go, I'll tell you what, you can do this if you unarchive all of the past recordings. You can just do this in your, wherever you get podcasts from, should be able to. And you can search by title of what we've talked about. If you, let's say you wanted some more on acceptance or on some other topic, you could search and maybe pull up some that would be on a particular topic. And we've actually talked about this verse this is probably the third time. I don't know. It's been a lot. And then we've done we did verses out of the Wentz, some of those, and Chuance's book on the Tao. There's good resources there. You can search back and get some other content on some different topics, and hopefully that'll be beneficial to you. Okay, we're going to get on into the discussion today. 69th verse. By the way, if you want to pull up a web page that has a number of different translations, there's also a link in the episode notes for that. And that's what we use a lot in the podcast. Some of the translations we use are not on the page, like a Jonathan Starr is separate, but the others we can find at the URL. Now I'll leave it in the episode notes. Okay, let's start with Drew. Drew, we'll start with you today. You going to read Stephen Mitchell for us?
I will. Verse 69. The generals have a saying, rather than make the first move, it is better to wait and see. Rather than advance an inch, it is better to retreat a yard. This is called going forward without advancing, pushing back without using weapons. There is no greater misfortune than underestimating your enemy. Underestimating your enemy means thinking that he is evil. Thus you destroy your three treasures and become an enemy yourself. When two great forces oppose each other, the victory will go to the one that knows how to yield.
Thank you. Oscar, you going to read us Jonathan Starr, I believe?
Yes, thank you. Verse 69. Great warriors have a saying, I dare not act as host, but would rather be a guest. I dare not advance an inch, but would rather retreat a foot. So advance, but do not use your feet. Seize, but do not use your arms. Cut, but do not use your sword. Fight, but do not use your own power. There is no greater misfortune than feeling I have an enemy. For when I and enemy exist together, there is no room left for my treasure. Thus, when two opponents meet, the one without an enemy will surely triumph. Thanks.
Man, that was full, isn't it? Wow. Brian, you going to read us Derek Lynn, I believe?
Yeah, sure. In using the military, there is a saying, I dare not be the host, I prefer to be the guest. I dare not advance an inch, but I prefer to withdraw a foot. This is called marching in formation without formation, raising arms without arms, grappling enemies without enemies, holding weapons without weapons. There is no greater disaster than to underestimate the enemy. Underestimating the enemy almost made me lose my treasures. So when evenly matched armies meet, the side that is compassionate shall win.
Thank you, Brian.
That's it.
These all mention the three treasures, but they don't say what the treasures are. I remember us talking about that not long ago.
I know Stephen Mitchell's version is patience, simplicity, and compassion. That you're right, that was just a few weeks ago.
Which verse was that?
67. I have just three things to teach: simplicity, patience, compassion. These three are your greatest treasures.
Yeah, Lynn says compassion, conservation, and not daring to be ahead in the world.
And in Jonathan Starr, it is the three treasures are love, moderation, and humility.
See, I used the freedom to love beyond my ability, the freedom to give when I am in need, and the freedom to live powerlessly, to perceive everything as a gift to be given away. So we've got compassion, we've got patience, I guess would be good, or mercy. No, that's the compassion. The conservation or economy, would that be the simplicity?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Yeah.
And humility.
Yeah. Okay. So he's saying in 69, that was 67, that we lose these things if we're not careful. We lose our humility, we lose our compassion. That conserving, I think we could say, could talk about being wrapped up in things too that were not wrapped up. Or the freedom to live powerlessly would be the simplicity. So we lose our surrender, right? Would that work? Maybe. I know I'm in trouble if I lose my surrender. If I quit surrendering and I start taking control, it's a problem. And that would fit with what he's talking about, I think, because he's talking about using force too. Let's start at the beginning. We'll just use Stephen Mitchell, and I want to talk a little bit about the Jonathan Starr too, and anything else you guys want to pull from any other translations or interpretations. The generals have a saying: rather than make the first move, it's better to wait and see. Rather than advance an inch, it is better to retreat a yard. Better to wait. Lynn talks about that as being preferring to be a guest. True.
Yeah, just one of the first things that comes to my mind when I hear this is how when I am in sobriety, I do a much better job of responding rather than reacting. The part about rather than make the first move, it's better to wait and see. Instead of trying to force my will or control a situation, I know I do a much better job of just allowing something to exist, allowing an event to happen, allowing people to speak without interrupting, without interjecting myself, without making my immediate wants and desires the focus of everybody's attention. And rather than advance an inch, it's better to retreat a yard. That reminds me of the phrase that has been in the Tao Te Ching a few times about remaining in the center, thinking about it in terms of being. I like using the metaphor of a merry-go-round, how in the center of the merry-go-round, it's pretty peaceful and calm. I remember being a kid and standing on the middle of the merry-go-round, and it was actually nice in there. But on the edges, that's where the kids were just holding on for dear life and flailing and going crazy trying to hang on. That image makes me think of retreating towards the center to gain more peace and calm. And if I'm straying further and further from the center, then that's where things start getting out of control for me.
Thank you, Drew. Yeah, but you can't always retreat, right?
Not always.
If you do, you would not win the battle here that they're talking about. The general can't constantly retreat. But it also says that he's not winning here. He's just moving very little. So the amount he's moving isn't really worth the force and the push. I really like the way the Derek Lynn and the J.H. McDonald Derek Lynn says, I dare not be the host, but prefer to be the guest. It's better to become passive in order to see what will happen. The McDonald. Become passive to see. Isn't that surrender? Isn't that the emptiness that we talk about? Oscar.
Is it emptiness? Yeah, I think so. I think when I read this verse and look for how it resonates with my internal being or my life, I think it's about the real self, which also is the silence or the witness, and the ego. So when I live from my ego and I think I am my ego, and my ego acts as a host. So it's the host of me inside my mind or my body. And I identify with this. So I'm the host. And then I completely identify with this ego and with this body. But when I'm the guest, I'm just a guest. Nothing more and nothing less. So it's more quiet and silent, I think, indeed, and centered. It also reminds me of the St. Francis prayer, which is also about the ego and letting go of our ego. And I also think the third stanza is about I have an enemy. So there's an I and an enemy. And the I actually is the silence or the witness or the God consciousness or the Tao. And the enemy is the ego, which kind of takes over this body and this life as if it is his. And then the identification is complete. And then there is no room for compassion or for humility or for simplicity, because I am very important, because I have a will and everybody has to live my will so I can be happy. But when I go back into this and let this ego thing just go and disappear and not be important, then there is just one thing or one being or without will, or it's just watching how things go and witnessing the life.
Do you think it would work if we substitute fear for enemy?
Yeah, I think so. It's the same. It's the same. Ego is fear.
It
Ego
is.
is constant motor of fear.
Underestimating fear means thinking that you are evil. Man, that's the case. I thought I am not the problem. It's the fear that I'm unknowingly allowing in my life that's the problem. That's what the steps do for us. They help us identify those fears, those enemies, and get rid of them. Tools to get rid of all of our fears that I found, and for spot C's I've seen. So you don't want to underestimate your fear or think it's you that is fearful. If you do, it will take your peace. It will take everything that's dear to you. The fear will. Is that not why we all? I know that's why I drank. I know we all have different addictions, but why did we want to escape? Because we were fearful.
I just wanted to get out of my mind.
Yes, yes. You wanted to do temporarily what the program does for you more permanently, right?
Yeah, and I didn't know it existed, that it was possible without substances.
Yeah. It just relieved the pressure.
Yeah.
When two great forces oppose each other, victory go to the one that's not fearful. Maybe that's a form of yielding. Oh, I'm jumping ahead. Let's go back. It's interesting too that, let's say you're a general, your ego has to be in check for you to surrender a yard rather than advance an inch. You advance, you're still in charge, everything's moving forward. How are you going to answer to your those that sent you there, the king or whoever, or whoever's above you in the chain of authority that you retreated? Retreat's a nasty word, Drew.
Yeah, quick little history lesson. on this topic. Texas was fighting for its independence against Mexico in 1836, I believe. And Texas was vastly outnumbered and didn't have nearly as many supplies or anything like that. And Sam Houston was in charge of the military. And a lot of people under him wanted to take the fight into Mexico. We need to go. We need to cross the Rio Grande, go into Mexico. We need to take the fight to them. And he ordered everybody to just fall back, which angered a lot of people because Mexico started going into Texas villages and towns and raiding them and causing people to flee. And Mexico kept advancing into Texas, and eventually they got to the point where their communication lines were stretched too thin. They were too far from their supplies. They got into a wetlands area that they weren't familiar with. They didn't know how to fight there. And that's where the majority of the population was, and their supplies and all that. And that's where Texas won the final battle of San Jacinto, was in that wetland marshy area where Texas just fell back, retreated, and got Mexico to follow them into basically a trap. So if Texas had kept pushing and pushing, they would have lost, absolutely 100% lost. So that's the little history lesson for today about better to retreat than advance sometimes.
Drew, I wondered how long it would be before you brought in Texas history to our podcast. Because I know you better have gotten that exactly right. Because if we have any other Texans on the podcast, they will correct you.
I'm 99% sure I got all that right.
Make sure you got that right. Y'all are proud of your Texas history. I hear you guys learn that in school, right?
Yeah, we have our own. Yeah, I think 3rd grade, 7th grade, maybe another grade. It's only Texas history, no world history, no U.S. history. It's only Texas history.
Yeah, we never had Georgia history, so that's good. I like that. Oh, that's good. Anyway, back to our deal, though. I just wanted to. I marked today down because I was waiting on it.
If you like, that doesn't have to be the last time I do.
I have any friends I have from Texas, they are proud to be from Texas. That's one thing that's different than anywhere else I know. Thank you, Drew. I appreciate that.
Sure.
So the general had to lay down his pride and his ego to wait and see, to be passive in order to see, to be a host instead of the guest. Let's talk about that for a minute. What's the difference in my attitude when, let's say I'm in someone's home and I'm a guest rather than the host? I'll go where they ask me to sit. I don't tell them what to do. I do, I'm gracious. I'm respectful. I'm really the opposite. If I'm a proper guest, I'm the opposite of being in control. I'm passive. I don't take ownership of anything that's going on. I don't have, if let's say they're cooking dinner and their very nice stove breaks. I don't get upset about it. It's not my stove or anything else happen around the house. I hate to see it happen for them, but my level of concern does not go into fear. How am I going to pay for this? Oh my God, another thing to fix. All that fear stuff that can rumble around. If I can take any situation just back from it, which would be acting like a host or acting like a guest, really. Because when I'm acting like a guest, how does that apply to my own life? How can I be a guest rather than host in my own life? Because we flip all these around to how we can apply them personally. Should I be acting as a guest all the time in my life, Oscar?
Yeah, I guess so. If you want to keep your three treasures, then I really like what you say about ownership. If I let go of my ownership of my life, at least when I make the decision, I do step three. So the decision to let go of the ownership of my life, I do step three and I give it away to a higher power. And that's a wonderful step. That's really a wonderful step. And since we have 12 steps, and the 12 steps says apply all the steps to everything in your life, yeah, we have to keep on going with letting go of ownership of our lives and of everything. So then everything just happens and it happens. And if I'm not an owner of anything, there is no problem. And still I'm alive in a way. So I will still advance, but do not use feet, and I will seize, but I do not just use arms. So everything goes on its own. So it's what did you say? Powerless, not powerless, but
Not helpless. Is that what you were talking about?
yeah, that's one. That's one of the same. Yeah, but I was looking for the Taoist non-action.
Ah, Wu Wei,
Yeah,
effortless effort. Is that what you were?
effortless effort. That was the one
Yeah.
I was.
I'd keep throwing them out to you till it was the one you were looking for. I'd start.
Yeah, we will find him. We will find him. Thanks.
That really is behaving like the guest rather than the host. How often has my excessive effort really benefited me? I can never see where my excessive effort, looking back, I can't see that.
No, there always will be new problems.
Yes.
Sometimes you have a success or something, and then you enjoy the success for 2 seconds, and there will be a new problem, which I have to solve.
Yeah, that's being the host instead of the guest. But it is work and it does start with that third step. Drew?
Yeah, I really like what Oscar said about being a guest is a lot about putting the Wu Wei into practice. Effortless effort. Thinking about times when I'm a guest in somebody's house, I like making it known that if they want any help, if they need any help with anything, I'm there to help. But I don't go actively looking for things to do. I don't start looking around saying, oh, this needs to be put away, or I should clean this, or oh,
Don't get their dirty clothes out and start washing them, do you? You
no.
don't.
And you're thinking, oh, I know what needs to be done in this house. That's making it so much about me. I want to feel useful. I want to feel helpful. I want them to know that I'm helpful. That's so much more different than just sitting and enjoying somebody's company or allowing somebody to continue cooking dinner while I pet the dog or play with the cat or something like that. They're trying to control anything when I'm at somebody else's house. I know that's one of the quickest ways not to get invited back is to start meddling in things that are none of my concern. So yeah, I like that. I like that metaphor.
Thank you, Drew. Yeah, the description after that is really what being a guest looks like. And being a guest, it's just like Wu Wei. Being a guest does not mean that I do nothing. The guest has a job. And sometimes when I'm a guest, it's much more difficult for me to sit by while something's going on than I got to get up and do it, whatever it is. But it's that same way in my own life. I have a job, but what I realized that my job was different than the job I was doing. A lot of people frame that as they were doing God's job. In a way, they're learning how to surrender and how to be the guest in their life. And instead, they're being the host and asking for help, but they're still the host. That did work because I had this ball of stress from that. I had to drink because life wasn't going just exactly like I thought it should go. I like the way that Jonathan Starr put that, and Oscar read it. But the description of being the guest would be first that you don't advance an inch, but you dare not advance an inch, but would rather retreat a foot. That is so that you can really see what's going on. Advance without using your feet, seize without, you're still advancing, you're still seizing. Then you seize, but do not use your arms. You cut, but do not use a sword. You still cut. It's not saying you don't. Fight, but do not use your own power. You're still fighting. You're just not using your own power. That's the effortless effort. It's still effort. The general's not going to win the war if he's not advancing. So it's not that we quit fighting and do nothing and sit around and meditate all day. It's not that kind of thing. It's that we learn to get to that place where we know our real part in life. It's like having a situation and coming to a place of acceptance of the situation rather than fighting to change it, thinking changing it is going to give you the peace you're looking for. If I only had this, if this person would start doing what they're supposed to do, if my son would quit misbehaving, all these things that we think make us happy when all these little parts are in order, or the order we think they should be in. But our real peace is in accepting the situation as it is in this moment. Then we can see what needs to be changed, other than the constant fight that we're always fighting the situation. Then we can see if there's something to change, because my peace is in acceptance. I've told stories over and over about that, and it really is, and it really works. And once I accept, I can see what's going on a little easier. Yeah, that's being the guest, definitely. Oscar?
I think again it's about the ownership. So advance, but do not use your feet. Seize, but do not use your arms. Cut, do not your sword. Your own power. Fight, but do not use your own power. As long as I'm identifying as a host of my life, I'm the owner of my life. So it's my life, and I decide what is good for me and what is bad for me, and I try to make everything as good as possible for me. Then I'm the host. But when I'm the guest, I'm just a guest in life. There is no identity with the person anymore or with the thoughts. It's just, so of course, we still move, we still advance, but I don't claim defeat. I don't claim the decision to walk. It's just happening. I seize, but I do not use my arms because it are not my arms. It's just arms. And the same with sword and with fighting. Yeah, fighters especially fight, but do not use your own power. So there must be another power.
Because without another power, Oscar, how could you cut without using a sword? You could.
No, you can't.
There's still cutting going on.
Yeah. There's just no you anymore. So
Not
there's
your
no
own
ownership.
power, right? You're not using your own power. Yeah, that's good. Thank you. No greater misfortune than feeling I have an enemy. That's from Starr. When I and enemy exist together, there is no room left for my treasure. That feeling you have an enemy. He didn't say having an enemy, but the misperception that you have an enemy. Mitchell said there's no greater misfortune than underestimating your enemy. Underestimating your enemy means thinking that he is evil. Okay, that he is referring back to who you're perceiving as your enemy. Thus, you destroy your three treasures and become an enemy yourself. I get what I give, right? If I'm giving fear, guess what I'm getting back? Can I look at the person who I feel is disturbing me, that their behavior needs to change, and it disturbs you every time they behave a particular way? Could be a significant other, could be anything. I have a friend that had a run-in with with the police years and years ago when he was a teenager. He was totally in the wrong. He was stealing stuff and doing things, and it was he was misbehaving, and they stayed on him till he left town. So every time he sees a policeman, he thinks they're after him. He hates every time he sees one. He starts complaining. He's destroying his treasures by thinking that he needs to, holding that resentment against any officer he sees. Definitely taking his treasures. Anytime I'm disturbed, I'm doing the same thing, though. Oscar?
It also reminds me of when I say I have an enemy, that a thing which is actually very much incorporated in our languages, that we talk about ourselves as a thing in ourselves. For example, I hear a lot of sponsors saying, and a lot of people in meetings saying, I don't trust myself. So then you have the feeling you have an enemy inside yourself, which is who is the I that is not trusting who. But you kind always, I'm not going along with myself. I am a mess with myself. I'm talking to myself all the time. It's it's an insane illusion that there is an I that is okay in me, and there is an I that is the enemy. It's just a feeling that there is an enemy. I don't trust myself. If I don't trust myself, I can't trust myself saying I don't trust myself, right? Then I'm lost. So that's why I thought there's no greater misfortune than feeling I have an enemy. And we are our own enemies, right? With our fears and our desires and all the voices in our head. We are our own enemies, and we take it very seriously. But if you don't take it seriously anymore and just, let it be what it is, it doesn't really matter. We skip the ownership and we just be a guest and see what's happening. Then we are on a path of spiritual awakening.
Yeah, thank you, Oscar. There's two questions I can ask that I jotted down. Let's say if I believe someone else is my enemy, and I can ask myself the same question. If they're attacking me in some way or whatever's going on, I can ask, what are they afraid of? That will get me in the right direction of understanding rather than being understood, the St. Francis prayer. Or I can ask myself that question. When I'm disturbed internally, what am I afraid of? Why am I allowing this to steal my treasures? What is it I'm having trouble accepting? Another question we can ask, if it's an outward thing, even if it's inward, how can I be helpful right now? This person's upset at me for whatever reason. How can I be helpful? Just sit. Just do the waiting they talk about at the first of this verse. Just wait. Seems like you're retreating, but you're really not. You're advancing without advancing, right? So, how can I be helpful? How can I introduce compassion into this, whatever's going on? I can do the same internally. I can look at the origin of the thought, say, okay, if I'm disturbed, is there fear involved here some way? How can I flip that to a compassion thinking rather than fearful thinking? And our book tells us, page 552 in the big book, we have a resentment. What do? We're disturbed. We have a resentment against someone. So I have that resentment against the police. I had one of those one time over. I pulled me over for, I forgot what it was, and I just would growl every time I saw a policeman. So what I had to do was I had to start praying for them when I saw them. That's how I introduced compassion into that disturbance, into that battle, let's say. We want to call it a battle. And with time, I realized I still pray for them every time I see them, but now I just do it. I don't have to. I have no resentment at this point. I was being the host instead of the guest, right? I was taking ownership. They did that to me. They didn't do that to me. Anybody doing what I was doing would have done the same thing. So it wasn't me. So why am I even taking this personally? If I'm guest in a house and even another guest come in, do something. I might not like what they did, but I don't take ownership of it. The guest, the host is right there. They take care of it. It's not my place. Drew?
The direction I was thinking about it going was when I've been upset at police officers and see one and get all riled up just because there is a cop around. I'm viewing the police officer at that point as an object rather than a person, just completely taking the humanity out. Like you were saying, praying for the actual person who's wearing the uniform, or praying for the person who's in a position of authority, or in a situation I found myself in the past where somebody in that position was bullying me or mean to me or judgmental of me, and I didn't like it. Treating that person as an object just really makes the situation worse for me, rather than seeing them as a person, thinking, I hope that police officer has a good shift. I hope that police officer returns home safe. I hope that person has some good experiences today, rather than being upset or angry about things that have happened in the past and projecting those onto that person without even taking their humanity into account. And that completely destroys the humility part of those three treasures, and the compassion. There's no compassion there. There's no humility. Seeing people as people rather than objects really helps keep me in the center.
Yeah, at this point in life, and it has been this way for a long time, I'm grateful and appreciative. 99% of my interaction with officers is great. And I found that when I come from a place of cooperation and a place of helpfulness, that's what I usually get back. So it makes all those interactions easier. Okay, the last little stanza. When two great forces oppose each other, the victory will go to the one who knows how to yield. Starr says, when two opponents meet, the one without an enemy will surely triumph. If we're internalizing this, a personal application is, if I'm in an interaction, if I approach that interaction without fear, I can regain my treasures or never lose them in this situation. If you wanted to use the verbiage, I can be in the war and I can be within the whole issue and never lose my peace.
I think if there's one line in the Tao Te Ching that applies to sobriety, it's this one. When two great forces oppose each other, the victory will go to the one that knows how to yield.
Yes.
If that's not surrender, tell me what is.
It's surrender, but it's not surrender.
It's choosing to surrender.
It's choosing to be the guest instead of the host.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And all these truths are paradoxical. If they're not paradoxical, they're not a truth, in my thinking. If someone could not take what we're talking about, and laugh at it as being so crazy that it wouldn't work, then I don't think it's really true. Or there's more truth, there's deeper truth in what we're saying. Like, how in the world can it help you to help another alcoholic? How does that get you? Someone from the outside would think that's crazy. How would it help you to retreat any at all? You need to push.
How does giving help you receive?
Then you finally get to the point, Drew, where you realize giving and receiving are the same thing. First time I heard that one from A Course in Miracles, it blew my mind. I was like, what? No, it's two totally different things. You know how I was fighting. I was in there being the host. And finally, I think one day at meditation, I just realized, yeah, it's like me saying the hand that feeds the mouth is not benefiting the hand, because it is. But you could see how if the hand had some consciousness, it might not realize it. They'd think, what in the world are they doing with this ugly mouth putting things in it? I don't want to do that, but I feel better when I do. I think it's just that simple. Okay, Drew, what's our title for today? I used one of your two last week. My vote is, am I the host or the guest in my life?
I like that.
You got another one?
Oh, what stuck out to me is just the last few words of Stephen Mitchell's knowing how to yield.
I was hoping you wouldn't have one better than mine.
I was thinking about my sponsor. He doesn't ask me this as often as he used to, but he would say, Brian, is this the hill you want to die on? Of course, my thought was like, I'm not dying on this hill. I'm going to win because I'm Dutch.
You're not going to get a resentment if I don't use yours, are you, Drew?
No,
Okay.
not at all. I have no attachment.
I was hoping you didn't need one today. Anything else before we close, guys? It's been a real good conversation today. You guys have a great day and hope to see you next week. Thank you. Hello, this is Buddy C. I wanted to make you aware of several recovery-related resources that I've posted in the episode description. These resources include a list of recovery podcasts, a free sober meditation app, daily recovery email, shared Google Recovery calendars. Hope you put some of these resources to use and have a great week.
Thank you for listening to the Tao of Our Understanding Recovery Podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, please share it with your friends in recovery.